quorum at this point. What I would like to do is call the meeting to order at 6:05. Mr. Buckley, are you recording minutes or?
I am. And
Okay.
we are recording the meeting for our YouTube channel as well.
Okay. And what I would like to do, I'm sorry, is to call the roll. So we are calling it to order at 6:06 p.m. I'm going to call the roll of members to see who is present, and I will start with Mr. Baldoff. Mr. Baldoff present. Mr. Baldoff is present. Mr. Beckerman, is Mr. Beckerman present?
Yes,
He is
I'm here.
here.
Thank you, Eric. Is Dr. Childs present? Elizabeth Childs? No. Mr. Connors, Paul Connors. Mr. Connors is present. Ms. Frigiletti, is Amy Frigiletti present? No. Okay. So, Mr. Buckley, I believe we have 4 out of 6 members. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. Prior to beginning the meeting, and I know for those who are with us from the Aggie, you probably have known, heard of, or at least seen the name of Francis O'Brien. Former Commissioner O'Brien was a trustee of the Norfolk Agricultural High School. He was on the select board in Dedham. He was a United States Navy veteran and really dedicated his life to public service. And one thing I found out recently, that he was a firefighter at one time. So he really has committed himself to public service. We lost him recently. And I would ask now that for the former Commissioner Francis O'Brien, we take a moment of silence before we begin our meeting tonight. Thank you very much. The agenda tonight has been posted. It has been posted in all the one city and the towns in Norfolk County, as well as the Norfolk County website. The agenda is limited to several pieces, and we will explore those now. Prior to doing that, I would like to just kind of set the stage a little bit from our friends from the Aggie Allies and other people interested in the Norfolk Agricultural High School and what is going on there. The first is that this particular meeting of the Norfolk County Finance Advisory Board Finance Committee is one that is by statute, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 35, Section 28B, limited to fiduciary responsibility of the advisory board with regard to the county finances. The Norfolk County Advisory Board is comprised of representatives who have been appointed by either the select board or a town council or a mayor to serve on this board, to be a check, if you will, on the budgetary matters of the county as put together through the Norfolk County Commissioners. That being said, the meeting that we had recently, the Norfolk County Advisory Board meeting, where the Aggie Allies were present, drew a lot of interest from members of the advisory board. Myself, I mentioned at that particular meeting that I do have a 9th grader. He is not at the Aggie. However, my concerns for his education are similar to yours. We all want the best education for our children. We want them to succeed. We want them to excel. The Norfolk Agricultural High School is one that is very different from any other high school that I know of in the region. I know Bristol County does have an agricultural high school, but I would argue that Norfolk County Agricultural High School is a jewel in the Commonwealth. Myself, I live in the town of Milton. I represent the town of Milton on the advisory board, and the town of Milton does not have any sort of programming that the county offers through the Aggie. The young men and women that I know who have graduated from the Aggie, who are there now, all speak to the wonderful experience they have to explore the different opportunities that they never would have been able to have in their local school district. So we can understand, certainly, not speaking for the members, speaking for myself, but in a general sense, the concerns that you have about Norfolk County Agricultural High School and your children. Tonight, we have the opportunity to listen to the concerns you have. Unfortunately, the concerns are limited to financial concerns. We have no authority, we have no power, we have no business, frankly, in interfering in anything operational. As an example, at one time, an individual reached out to me because as a member of the advisory board, they thought I might be able to help with a parent-teacher issue at the Aggie. We can't do that. We have to draw the line on that. We're very strict about that. We obviously have to abide by certain codes of ethics, and we do so. However, we are able to take information given to us and use it in our deliberations over the budget. As an example of that, if someone said, well, I think that this particular program deserves X dollars, we can certainly look into that. We do not have any authority in the hiring of a superintendent or any other employee of the agricultural high school. We do have authority, however, over salaries and the like, in the sense that we can pinpoint those items as part of the budget. And I hope I'm trying to be clear on our authority there, because we are open, we want to hear things, but our capacity is somewhat limited. The Norfolk County Commissioners and the trustees, as commissioners are trustees, in addition to the ones who are appointed, have control over the operational aspect of the Norfolk County Agricultural High School. However, we try and work collaboratively. We also work as a check. Sometimes the trustees and or the commissioners, we want to do things that does not fit within the fiduciary responsibilities that we believe we have for the county. And that is what we bring to the table tonight. I would also like to add that the Norfolk County Advisory Board and Norfolk County Commissioners have made a intentional commitment to being transparent. Beginning with last year's budget, all of the information about our budgetary proceedings have been posted on norfolkcounty.org. In addition, all of our Zoom meetings, because we cannot meet in person, have been recorded and are available on our YouTube channel. It can also be accessed through the norfolkcounty.org website. So all of this is not only public record and a public meeting, but can be accessed in the future if someone wished to do so. So if there are members of the Aggie Allies, for example, that want to go back and say, what did Joe Reardon say at that moment? You have the opportunity to do so. We've been very transparent about that. And I hope that that is something that you feel is a way that government is working for you, because that is our intent. So with that, a couple of ground rules. One is we would appreciate the comportment of all those involved. I know, having a ninth grader myself, that I would be agitated if I felt that his education was being threatened. But at the same time, we have to be able to discern the different pieces that are involved so that we can make decisions that would benefit the Norfolk County Agricultural High School. Secondly, the way that we will operate tonight, this is not a Zoom webinar, it is a Zoom meeting. So as a public meeting, we want to make sure that everyone is heard. So what I would respectfully ask is that those who wish to speak kindly add their names into the chat. We will do our best to monitor the chat for names. We'll definitely be focused on that. Questions through chat, we may take a few moments or maybe longer to get back to you, but we promise we will get back to you. If you do not wish to speak and wish to make a comment via chat, if you could kindly add your email address, and if rather than disseminate that to everybody, if you could send that to our host, and that would be our Assistant Director, Bill Buckley, he would be able to record those email addresses And I, as chair of the finance committee with my colleagues, would be able to send you a response based on the information that we have and the capacity that we have as advisory board members. So with that, I will, and I see there are a couple people on the chat right now, open it up to the Aggie allies and anyone who wishes to speak with regard to the proposed 2022 Norfolk County Agricultural High School budget. So I think we have Julie Perillo. Julie, do you wish to speak?
Yes,
Yeah,
sure.
thank you very much. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
I like your
Um,
logo behind you, by the way. I've seen those. It helps me know who's who.
Yes, yeah, it's appearing backwards to me, so I was a little confused, but I guess it's mirrored on the
Looks
the
good to
Zoom.
us.
Julie, could I ask you a favor? Would it be possible for me to speak first? Because we had discussed my kind of framing the conversation. Would that
I'm
be?
sorry, could you identify yourself, please? I can't see. on my
Yes, I'm
screen.
Natasha Hitalski. I had put my information in the chat as well.
I'm sorry, Natasha, it hasn't. Oh, there we go here.
That's fine
In
with me.
fact, you are first. Julie, do you yield to
Absolutely.
Natasha? Okay, great. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you so
Natasha,
much,
please.
Julie. I appreciate it. Just because I think it's helpful for us to frame this conversation correctly this evening. We really want to share information with you. And we want it to be a discussion and not just people laying out concerns, but also talking about potential solutions. So, okay. With that said, I wanted to start off by thanking you really just a ton for this opportunity to speak to you about our concerns. And we really appreciate your taking the time and putting us on the agenda this evening. I want to start by saying that I come to this from a business perspective. The numbers here, they speak for themselves. If I was assessing the Aggie as an institution that I wanted to see continue and thrive, I would be quite concerned. I deal daily in my job with assessing risk and reward and assisting the companies that I've worked for to make choices about the right trade-offs for the health of those companies. Looking at the makeup of the advisory board, I found a wide range of backgrounds and knowledge, both from your work lives as well as your personal interests. I found a lot of public service, which is wonderful, but I also found expertise and interests in public works, engineering, child and adolescent psychiatry, advanced planning in multiple areas, knowledge in finance, community preservation, and connections to various schools or organizations that work with children. I even found a background in funerals, something that has affected all too many families this year. So it's those areas that I'm going to speak to and how I want to frame the conversation tonight. The Aggie is and may continue to be, and I hope will continue to be, a unique school that gives children, some of whom couldn't thrive anywhere else the way they do there, opportunities that they can't find anywhere else. I have heard so many stories from parents saying how this school has been a saving grace for their children. Some people even say their kid is alive because they could come to this school, so that's just gigantic. However, the school is deeply in debt and it's getting further in debt. And continuing to run the school on an increasing debt in this way is not sustainable. And it actually puts the school in a great deal of danger. And I say this as somebody who works with these types of risk assessments frequently. If money isn't shifted to the right areas in the school budget, these risks will only grow. And they might sadly, unfortunately, imperil the school itself. As those of you from DPW backgrounds know, you have to maintain infrastructure. You can't just ignore it. It's important to make fixes when they're needed. And for those with long-term planning experience, whether that's financial or funeral or other, you have to look ahead in order to see what the trends are and what's necessary for healthy planning, because if you don't do that, you may not have what you need when you get there. Community preservation, this is an amazing property in school. It makes a huge difference to this whole community. If you want it to be there for future generations, we have to do something now to make sure that it can be preserved. And as far as children and children's needs and mental health, which I especially want to speak to for Dr. Childs, I know that you have tons of expertise in this area, and you could probably speak far better than I to the costs to children's mental health during the COVID crisis right now. It's been tough. when I talk about trade-offs for the health of the Aggie, I want to be really, really clear about this. Right now, trade-offs are already being made at the school. So the problem is that when you look at a budget plan, you're seeing the things that are being paid for. What you don't get to see is the things that aren't being paid for. And sometimes, very often, that's actually just as important. So right now, there are a lot of things being offered at the school, like free housing, free utilities, high salaries for administrators, an overly large number of administrators for the size of the school, and a lot of other issues that are being traded off for security and serious safety needs, basic fundamental classroom needs, including equipment for the STEM programs, which I was actually surprised to find out how ill-equipped they were. And there's also serious safety needs for children, like not just the things that you would normally, but paraprofessionals and counselors. Each of these trade-offs, which is being made for financial reasons, unfortunately, in this case, includes liability. And it may surprise you to know that a child was already injured at the Aggie because of lack of enough paraprofessionals. Luckily, that injury was minor. Sadly, that child has now left the school. But if you imagine what could have happened if that injury was not minor, this school is only one really serious lawsuit away from financial disaster. And a financial cost like that could ripple to the county level as well. And that's how I want to frame this. We want to put this on a sound footing, a secure footing that will allow it to continue to go safely forward and be the institution that we want it to be. And we don't want it to disappear. I just wanted you to keep these points in mind as we present the issues with the finances of the school. We also welcome a ton of questions. We have been really careful in our research. We've tried to get as much information as we can. And we want to share all that information with you so that that can help you with your considerations and your suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do any of the Finance Committee members have questions?
Not at this time.
I see Dr. Child's hand, actually.
Mr. Chairman,
John?
can I ask a
Oh.
question?
You're on. I didn't see you, Dr.
Yes, I
Shaw.
am. I'm stuck in
Please
a
do.
corner somewhere, Joe. I don't know. I wondered, Natasha, could you go through the list of the priorities again that you feel are not being funded, that you
Sure.
think are critical priorities for the school that are not being funded adequately? Could you just go through that list a little more
Right.
slowly?
Oh, yes,
so we can get it?
absolutely. No
Okay, that'd be
problem.
great. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think some of those points will also be touched on by Jen, who has a lot of the financial detail, but I'll be happy to go through those. So as far as the trade-offs that are happening right now, would you like me also, Dr. Childs, to give a little bit more detail on each of those?
Yes, because they ended up in a list. I thought the
Yeah.
list was good. I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure I got the list and understood what the list was.
Of course, I totally understand that. And it goes by kind of fast if you're not familiar with it.
Okay.
So the first one, security. So for example, key cards for the doors. We all want this to remain an open campus. But as we know with a lot of open campuses out there, for example, they have various security measures in place so that the buildings are not completely open. It allows them to have an open campus environment. The kids can walk over, they can continue to let community members on campus, but when the kids are in those buildings, there is a lot more security for them. For example, like you don't necessarily want everybody to be able to walk into that building, into a classroom or into the bathrooms, for example. This is not at the school. It's something that has been discussed. It's something that has been acknowledged by members of the Board of Trustees as being very, very important and a real kind of security hole at the school, but it has not been financed. Some things like basic STEM equipment. It might surprise you to find that not all classrooms actually are fully equipped with the correct safety equipment for the science programs. So you don't have multiple sinks in all of those classrooms, which is very, very important when you're dealing with chemicals or biological matter. There are also not the right type of lab tables for every classroom. They don't have Bunsen burners in every classroom. The teachers in the science program have to trade these things around. There are issues with the chemical storage. The chemical storage needs to be professionally cleaned out, organized, and restocked by a group that actually can do that, that's actually qualified. I'm trying to remember, they have an organization that they would like to use, but that has never been approved, and it's something that's critically needed. Right now, a lot of the chemicals are stored in the same closet as the janitorial equipment in the building that they're in, which is just not safe. Other things, they do not have enough paraprofessionals at this time. The school takes on a ton of children on IEPs or who have other special needs of various kinds. Some of those children that they take on, this is a really good fit for them as a school, but they do need someone there with them in some of these, class situations where they're dealing with, in certain cases, fairly dangerous equipment. The teacher doesn't have the capacity to look after 30 children, plus the 2 who need something. 1 second, just a sec, my dog is unfortunately barking here. And then counselors is another area that's gotten traded off. This year, 2 counselors and the psychiatrist were laid off. At least the initial reasons for that were financial specifically. And they have not been able, I believe they managed to get 2 people to serve as counselors, but they weren't the ones, of course, that the kids already had relationship with. The counselors actually had stellar reputations. They were working really well for the children, and suddenly they weren't there. The psychiatrist has not been able to be replaced. There is a nationwide shortage in that area, unfortunately, for school psychiatrists. And that has possibly also incurred additional financial cost to the school, unfortunately, because they've had to, of course, as you probably know, Dr. Childs, there are certain tests and things that must be administered by a psychiatrist. They can't just use a counselor for that. So they've actually had to contract out for those services. That also additionally means that they're not necessarily working with a psychiatrist who knows these kids much more intimately and is more fully aware of their exact situations. So these are just a few of the areas that we're talking about. I hope that helps.
That helps a lot. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mr. Connors?
Well said, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Heltowski, could you describe for me the situation involving the injury to the student?
I actually do not personally have the details on that. I was given that information by a teacher at the school, but if you would like me to try to obtain more information about that, I could try to do so.
Okay, I mean, that's a serious situation.
Yeah.
And I assume it was reported?
I would assume so. I have no reason to think that they were not, being completely honest and accurate with me when they told me they were very concerned about the fact that situation had even arisen. So I will try to get that information for you.
Okay, well, I think.
I also don't know what privacy concerns are around that. So I will try as a regular citizen to get that information, but I don't know what I'll be able to obtain. Okay.
Well, my expectation is that as long as the individual is not named, it would be, and I think you would agree, it would be okay just to know the circumstances.
Yep, absolutely.
And I would ask the superintendent, Dr. Quinn, are you on the call, please?
I am.
Dr. Quinn, did you receive a complaint regarding an injury like that?
Never.
Okay. All right. And that's something that we want to be concerned with. Obviously, the safety of the children is something that's really important to everybody. And speaking to the open campus system and the safety of the bathrooms and things like that, that's something that could potentially be a budgetary matter that the advisory board could consider. But safety involving a student injured in a classroom is something that we wouldn't necessarily be involved with, but I think my colleagues would agree is of grave concern to us. And it needs to be reported. If something like that happens, it needs to be reported. Otherwise, no one will know and we'll have no idea what was happening. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a tough one. I wouldn't want to see, I mean, like I said, my ninth grader, if something happened to him in the classroom, I'd be in the principal's office, you know, I'd be camping out in the principal's office is what I'd be doing. But, you know, that's something that needs to be addressed. And we just want to discern the differences between something that was reported and wasn't reported and how we can address it so that we can, in looking from a budgetary perspective, address it appropriately so that if it is a situation where the bathrooms need to be locked so someone couldn't come in and use them, I'm making that up, of course, but we want to be able to do that. But we also want to make sure that we have the right information. So thank you very much for that.
Correct. Absolutely. Okay. I will get working on that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no, that's important that we have, you know, confirmation of incidents that have happened so that we can follow up on them. That'd be awesome. Do you have
Yes,
any
and-
question? Do you have any
Go ahead.
questions with the finance committee? I know you asked Dr. Child's questions, but we also have Misters Balda, Beckerman, and Connors as members of the finance committee. Do you have any more questions?
I don't personally at this time. I would rather let other parents speak to the details about the finances at the Aggie and then see where that discussion leads, if that's possible.
Absolutely.
Okay,
So I
thank
think
you.
Ms. Petrillo was next. Is that correct? I think she yielded to you, Ms. Hatalski. Is that correct?
I did. Yes, and
Okay.
I can yield to Jen Matthew if you'd like to go first, Jen. No? Okay. All right. I'll go. Okay. So I'm Julie Perillo. I'm a mom of an Aggie ninth grader. And I'm speaking tonight as a parent. My background is in education as well. And I'm an elected member of the Aggie School Council. So I was involved with writing the school improvement plan. I want to say up front that the Aggie, as Mr. Reardon said, is an incredibly special place for my child, for generations of kids who don't learn the same way as their peers or who have that agricultural bent. And it's a lifesaver for my family and I know for a lot of others. So we're here speaking to you tonight, not as a group of disgruntled parents looking to bash our kids' school. It's so much more than that, and passions do get high sometimes because we feel so passionately that this school is so special and so important to our families. So we are speaking with the goal of helping the school be in the best financial shape it possibly can be. When I got to the school this year and got onto the school council and started writing the school improvement plan, I was dismayed every step of the way to hear that any idea, any attempt to make change was roadblocked by financial concerns. There was no real room for making any progress because the word was, can't afford it, can't afford it, can't afford it. The school's in trouble. I know that Natasha went through some of the things that we've been trying to do. Within the school improvement plan, we have a goal of expanding Wi-Fi to the outside. For those of you who aren't in education, teachers are being urged to take kids outside as much as they possibly can. Right now especially, but that's challenging when you have students who are fully remote and you have students who are in person, so you need to have Wi-Fi so you can interact with the students at home while you're teaching the students in front of you. The Aggie, of course, is a very unique campus in that we all know it's spread out over many acres, and apparently there's the Wi-Fi situation impacts the ability to communicate from different parts of the campus. So students can be out in the forest working on some sort of an assignment. And if an emergency were to happen, folks can't even get 911 on their phones because there is no signal and no communication out there. So that's one of our goals on the school improvement plan, is to improve that. You heard about the building security measures, and while we obviously love that it's an open campus and that it being an open campus comes with challenges with security, another goal is to have key passes or something to secure these buildings a little bit further. We sought additional support staff in our conversations in writing this school improvement plan. That hasn't happened yet. The school psychologist has been gone for a year during a pandemic when students' psychological well-being is poor. As an educator, I'm appalled that the student support department was gutted mid-pandemic. School adjustment counselors were let go, beloved school counselors, a beloved school psychologist. They were all let go. So these connections that kids had were lost. And new people came in, somebody came in, didn't last long, was gone within a few days or weeks or whatever. There still is no school psychologist there, and we continue to hear that it's money is the situation. As an educator, I'm concerned that there's no grade level assessment to identify learning gaps, but the funds aren't there to pay teachers to create a data team, to invest in testing technology. We have a situation where our top 3 earners at the school are provided free all expense paid housing on top of their salaries. When you're looking at an average 3-bedroom rental in the area, I came up with approximately $2,500 a month. That's for an apartment. There was a little more, some a tiny bit less. That's about $30,000 a year in rental. The average Mass resident pays $5,600 a year in utility costs. So when combining the salaries, the superintendent receives a compensation package when you combine the salary with the value of the housing and the utilities of approximately $200,000. That's $50,000 more than the superintendent of Blue Hill Regional receives. The same thing with the business manager at the Aggie. That position, when you count salary, housing value, and utility value, that position receives $185,000 in total compensation. That's about $55,000 a year more than the business manager position at Blue Hill, and $40,000 a year more than the business manager of the Dedham Public Schools. The Aggie has under 600 students. Blue Hill has close to 900. Dedham Public Schools have close to 3,000 students. And then there's an administrative assistant at the Aggie who earns $40,000 a year more than the same position at Blue Hill and $25,000 more than the same position at Dedham Public Schools. If we have a school where folks are receiving this level of compensation that is so far in excess of what comparable schools and surrounding communities are receiving, we shouldn't be in the financial situation that we are in. The school can't sustain itself for much longer. We're heartened to hear that the county itself is taking steps to right the financial situation by bringing in the outside organization that's assessing your finances. The Aggie too needs this intensive help. Our fears are that if we don't speak up about the waste and mismanagement that we're seeing now, it will be too late. And unfortunately, we've been met with a less than receptive, as on a whole, there are members of the Board of Trustees who have been receptive. On the whole, they have not been receptive to these types of conversations, which is why we've now come to you. Thank you.
I'm old. I didn't unmute myself. Thank you very much, Ms. Perillo. I would like to extend to our members an opportunity to ask questions. Mr. Baldoff, do you have any questions?
I don't, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Beckerman,
Again, not at this time.
Dr. Childs.
No, thank you, Julie. That was helpful.
Thank you.
And Mr. Connors?
No, I'm here to listen.
Thank you. Mr. Buckley, did
No,
Ms.
you don't.
Can't
Frigiletti,
take notes.
You know,
did Ms. Frigiletti,
asked you on it tonight, say
on-
you tried to contact them.
I believe someone has. There we go. Okay. Okay. They weren't muted. I just have a question of you, Ms. Perillo. Obviously, the importance of an educational background is can't be overlooked. Are you a teacher in a local district or?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. So, I mean, you know the ins and outs and we appreciate that. Thank you.
I know the ins and outs and it has been a culture shock every step of the way. I'm 20 plus years in education. And I've never had an experience like I have had when it comes to trying to work with the Board of Trustees at the Aggie and the leadership as a whole.
Okay.
Never. And I've
Right.
worked for and with many, many, many people. And
Okay.
this is far outside of the norm and red flags every time I turn around.
Thank you. One thing that I failed to ask Ms. Hajalski and ask you, what communities are you from? I'm sorry, because we have members from the advisory board representing every community in the county.
Sure. Yes, I'm from Dedham.
Dedham, thank you very much. You'll hear a little bit more about your representative in a little while. Ms. Hajalski, where are you from? Natasha, are you there? Did we lose Natasha?
Sorry, I was trying to do the research for you to track down which teacher. I've talked to so many teachers, so I don't know who told me that piece of information. So I was trying to find that for you.
Okay.
Okay,
Where are you from?
I'm from Framingham, actually. I'm not in county. My daughter is one of the children who comes from out of county.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure,
So, and-
absolutely.
And this is on me chairing this meeting, and I apologize, but we would like to extend to the representatives of the advisory board who from their community has been speaking about this and has concerns about this. So when you do introduce yourselves, if you could kindly add your community as well. I apologize for that. So I am going through the list now. Here's Perillo, and we have, oh boy. That's just a question. So Teresa, has asked several questions on the chat, but I do not have an email. Oh, no, now you want to speak. I'm sorry. I'm scared. I'm scanning down, so I apologize for that. Please welcome and identify yourself and your community.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Teresa Maltz. I actually live in East Bridgewater. My child is a freshman out of district. Attended camps at the Aggie, 3rd through 6th grade, I believe. It was her dream and passion to be at that school. I served with Julie on the school council. And I, up until April of this year, was a 6-year member of the East Bridgewater School Committee.
Okay, Teresa, can I interrupt you for a second? I apologize.
Absolutely.
How do you spell your last name?
M-A-L-T-Z.
Aha, okay, I would have put an S there, so thank you very much.
No problem. And I just really want to support a lot of what Julie said. Sorry, I have parrots. Let me move. In terms of really being disappointed at the responsiveness of the trustees as it relates to some of these issues. Having served on the school as an elected member of the school committee for 6 years, you know, I worked on in a 6 years, sorry, let me move. 6 years ago, when I joined the East Bridgewater School Committee, we were looking at huge layoffs. And a lot of other cuts, and we worked diligently to make our budget student-centered. And what I find in this budget is it is less student-centered and more, I want to find a polite way to say this, administratively centered, and maybe a little too heavy on some of the facility type expenses that really should be evaluated more closely. And I think special ed is a huge area that needs more support. We're looking at a new director, but they only work a part-time schedule. Same schedule as a teacher. We really need a full-time special education director there. Because the needs of the kids are not being met. That I can say without question. I think the budget should really, someone should look at it line by line and really ask a lot of questions, which is what I did in East Bridgewater. And we have come so far. And I think doing that, you too could probably make a lot of improvements with the school without really even increasing costs.
That's awesome. Given your experience, would you be able to provide us with some specific suggestions or examples? Because from an advisory board position, we, of course, only have fiduciary responsibility and oversight. But any of that information would be helpful if you have specific ideas about that, given your experience on.
I absolutely can draft up an email and send it off to you.
That would be great. Thank you very much. We appreciate your help, Ms. Smalls.
My pleasure.
I'm looking on the chat and I do not see any other people who wish to speak to the Norfolk County
we
Agricultural
have-
High School budget.
Mr. Chair, we have Ms. Matthews who just sent.
Is she in? Oh, there she is right there. My bad. I'm sorry. Thank you. Ms. Matthews, my apologies with that. Please, you have the floor. Or the internet, whatever we would say in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Reardon. So I really didn't want to speak tonight because I'm all talked out at this point. You guys are kind of our last attempt at getting anyone who would care to hear what's going on at this school. I mean, other than the IG and the AG, and they know what's going on a daily basis. So we're trying to find help, immediate help, because the other help's going to take a little bit longer. But the self-serving nature of the administrators and the board of trustee at our school is killing our school. And I don't know if everyone's aware of the fact that agriculture and environmental, it is the key to our future survival as a planet. So I myself, a 24-year construction veteran, have switched to commercial farming because not only is it necessary, it is going to be unbelievably lucrative. So you're talking about a facility here that is being run into the ground out of greed, that is vital to the survival of our species. We need to train our youth to be farmers again and to be stewards of our planet. Now, I have some questions for you all because we sent you a letter letting you know what was going on at the school. And we expected that, we might get reached out to. Someone might have some questions about what we put in writing, but we heard nothing. And then you did offer to listen to us tonight, which thank you very much for that. Natasha chased you down, I understand, and made sure that we got on the agenda. I know it's not comfortable.
Excuse me if I could correct you on that. If you recall, and it was recorded, I invited the Aggie allies to come before the finance committee. So I don't want to correct you, but I want to make sure that everyone knows how transparent this operation is on the advisory board. So I wouldn't say, and I don't know what's behind it, but I offered as chair at the last meeting to have the Aggie allies come in. So I don't feel that's a fair assessment, Ms.
Okay.
Matthews. So I just wanted
I
to let
think
you
it
know.
was Elizabeth Childs actually that made the suggestion, if I remember correctly. But I
No,
do
that would
thank
be
you again.
incorrect. You can check the tape on that.
Okay,
I invited people in.
either way, we're very thankful that you invited us. I wish that there was more transparency at the working level, because that's really where we're struggling with the lack of transparency. So as the advisory board, are you aware of the year after year budget challenges and overruns?
Is that a direct question?
It is.
Yep. We absolutely are. 100%. It's a challenge for the county.
Okay. And so why was the Abrams group, that's their name, right? Abrams?
Abraham's.
Abraham's group, why were they not given access to the school sooner than they were?
I cannot answer that question. I don't believe that it was an access issue. I think it was a process issue. I would defer to Dr. Childs to share with us how that process worked. Dr. Childs, if you
I
could,
I
please. He
can
is our
probably help.
liaison.
I can probably help a little bit with that. From the beginning, the school was part of the Abraham scope of work. They were staging their work, doing pieces as they went through, but there was that was from the start, the Aggie was to be included. And I think most of it was basically a staging issue. They couldn't tackle everything at once, but I think Joe, Commissioner Shea, would you like to
I
add
agree.
anything to that?
I agree. And when the scope of work was
Bid out, we bid out for that
sent
too.
out,
Mhm.
it was in there. Now, a further question came up about some questionnaires and why they didn't go to the teachers. The decision was made at the time not to go on to the education portion so much as the management, the budget, maintenance, those kind of issues, and that was the charge given. And one of the principals in the Abrams group is a former business manager of a school system in Easton, Mass. I believe it's Framingham. I'm not positive of the town, but he's spent a lot of time and they're not through yet. This has been going on. We bid it last August. I think we made the choice late in September and then awarded the contract in November, and they have been working ever since with the idea of having it done. If I say June, it'll be July. If I say May, it'll be June. This before the summer, before the heat of the summer. We, the commissioners, have had 4 or 5 updates about the capital budget, about certain progress reports, but we have made no decisions. We haven't seen the final product. This is after trying to obtain other information for every department and policies from the state, letters from the state last year, letters back and forth, other relief that we sought. So suggestion to go outside was collectively made with the advisory board last year. And, the report is not ready yet. I think you'll find these people are around, they're straightforward, and they're taking a lot of information, and it's a big task.
No, the
And,
concern, Commissioner Shea, if I might, was
sure.
I sat in on commissioner meetings and repeatedly they kept coming forward saying, we sent surveys to the school, but nobody's responding from the school. And then I asked teachers and the teachers said, nobody's heard from them. We haven't received any surveys. And so the can seemed to be getting kicked and no input was coming back, data that could be used, to help understand what's going on at the school. That was the concern, is that they were saying, we're not getting any response from the school. And yet the school's saying, nobody's reached out to us.
that might be the teachers. It's not the other employees. They did not send the questionnaire to the teachers. That was decision made at bid time when they did it. It wasn't in the scope of work. That is correct.
Okay, well, the administrators weren't responding then because we have the Abrahams group saying they're not receiving any response from the school.
I
So
think
it's
they
just
didn't say they
frustrating.
was received none. I think they were unhappy with the response rate. They gave the actual percentage rate.
Okay, all right, that's
We-
fine, that's fair.
We can definitely follow up on that, though.
And we
Okay.
have.
Shay and I will be in a meeting with the Abraham's group, and we can follow up
All right.
about if that. The other thing I was just going to say that I think is really important, Commissioner Shea, and we when we went out to bid for the Abraham's group, a critical element of the scope of services was to find a consultant who had the capacity to also look at a school, at the Aggie. And that was actually not that easy to find. And so that's part of the Abraham's group brought to the table expertise in that. So it's been on the radar of the commissioners right from the start. And I just wanted to give my chairman a little credit here, because it was on his invitation that you're here tonight. I did say I thought we should listen to you, but as always, Chairman Reardon just took that and ran with it. So I do want to just give him a little backup here.
Well,
Thank you,
again,
Doctor.
Very thankful for
Yeah,
that.
thank you both.
I wonder though, you've seen the budget and you see the salaries year after year. Do you not see the problem that we have with the salaries at the Aggie and how it can be understood that there's a lack of checks and balances that have allowed these salaries to balloon anywhere from 10 to 30% greater than comparable other employed individuals at public schools?
If I could speak to that, Ms. Matthew, two pieces. One, back to your comment about the IG and the AG. The genesis of this actually began with the commissioners reaching out to the, not the Inspector General, but rather the state auditor to come in. So there's different pieces. The state auditor does a piece, the IG does a piece, the AG does a piece. The AG is strictly legal. The IG does legal and financial, the auditor is financial and moves over to the AG if there's something to be prosecuted. So the original piece was to stay within the system, to recognize that we are part of a larger system, like we all know, and ask the Office of the State Auditor to come in and do an audit. She declined doing an audit. So that is when the members of the advisory board and the commissioners determined that we have to do something. What can we do? And that's how the Abrahams group came in. So I just wanted to clarify that because you did mention the IG and the AG, and then Commissioner Shea was talking about the genesis of this. So I wanted to bring that forward as part of the transparency. The other side of it is that the advisory board does review the budget every year. As part of the budget, which is all public record, are the salaries of the employees. Anyone can get it. If you work, Ms. Matthew, if you work for a municipality, you in fact would have your salary listed somewhere. I believe that today some salaries were listed from the Boston Police Department as an example. It's all public. So we are very well aware of the salaries involved. However, what I will say is that we do not, as an advisory board, have any involvement with any negotiations or contracting with any of the administrators that you call out. That is something that the trustees would do, and then the superintendent would do for people other than that. So we do follow it. We are aware. We do look at comparatives. We do look at, okay, I'm sorry, what town are you from?
Medfield.
Medfield. We look at the superintendent in Medfield versus the superintendent in Weymouth versus the superintendent in wherever, looking at the Blue Hills Regional District, the Bristol County Agricultural High School. All that becomes a part of our conversation, as does, as an example, registries of deeds. Well, how does the Norfolk County Registry operate? How many employees do they have? What are their salaries compared to what others are? As an example, we have pinpointed that I think it might have been Ms. Perillo mentioned that there was an admin who made an X amount of dollars that seemed to be high in her opinion. there is an admin at the Registry of Deeds that makes, and I don't quote me on it, if not equal, perhaps more than that individual. But in many cases, I know with the Aggie, that was inherited. That wasn't something that the superintendent came in and just gave someone something. That was inherited. On the registry side, it was totally different. It was someone that they hired and gave them an exorbitant salary. However, we don't have much control over that other than to know what it is. So we are aware of it, but our control is limited. The trustees have the control and will negotiate with the county on the contract with the new superintendent, whatever that may entail. And Chair Shea, if you could comment on that, because I just want to make sure that I am correct in my assessment.
I believe it's accurate. If specifically about the new superintendent, the full Aggie School Board is in negotiation with the new superintendent. Last Wednesday or Thursday night, a package, an offer has been made to him, and we're waiting to hear back. Our next meeting is next Wednesday, the 12th. But let me go back for 1 minute. I'm looking at a memo about the Abrams Group's scope of work, which I know has been sent out to a number of people that have requested it. And if the Friends of the Agricultural School want it, I can send the whole package, and it outlines, who, what, when, and where, and how we arrived at the decision to go outside, to have a fresh eye, a proven company. And we did receive 2 bids. We interviewed them both, as Dr. Childs said, and and they were both good. The other was the Commonwealth through UMass Collins Institute. The one thing that popped out to me was the Abrams Group history in school districts. They got history in water and sewer. They got history in all sorts of municipalities. And there's truly in New England hundreds of municipalities that they've worked for. I would doubt, I bet they've worked in several of towns of our member towns. I know myself, when I was working for the city of Quincy, that this group did some sort of work in the water and sewer having to do with the billing, et cetera, et cetera. And all that is provided. If you don't have a copy, I'll be sure that you get everything that we have.
That would be great. I know a parent has asked for it on the chat here. So another item is that this is a negotiation year with our teachers. And so you see the budget, and there is no money in the budget for negotiations with our teachers. That's very troubling from a parent standpoint. Our teachers are already, they're not undercompensated, they're not overcompensated. Our teachers are compensated in the medium range at this point at our school, as opposed to our administrative staff or non-union staff that's compensated at the higher end of the range. And now we're in a negotiating year. Our teachers have passed a vote of no confidence in our Board of Trustees, and they have good reason to have done so. And then it's budget time, and now there's no money in the budget to negotiate with our teachers. What kind of message does that send, and where does the advisory board stand on that?
So the advisory board does not have any ties to any of the contractual negotiations, any sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? That's terrible. I'm getting old, Ms. Matthew, and I apologize for that. But any sort of collective bargaining does not have an impact on the advisor group other than the bottom line. Now, earlier you mentioned you were in the construction industry, is that correct?
It was.
Union person?
Nope.
Okay, so the collective bargaining is a piece that is a little bit different, and the way that it's done is a little bit different in terms of what you get paid now versus how you get paid when the contract is negotiated and signed. But I would defer to Chair Shea and perhaps to Superintendent Dr. Quinn to kind of speak a little bit more to that process.
Well, in the 5 years I've been here, I was the last member of the board, or the lowest member of the board, and I handled for the commissioners and negotiations. And we did have our last contract of which it's coming to an end. And the money was in some of the years because they set a 3-year, we set 3-year rate and we're in the 3rd year. So we knew what it was calling. I can't imagine, and I'm telling you, that when we reach an agreement with the teachers union, as every other union, we have to go back and get the money, and it has to go through a whole, it just goes through the board to be approved, and it's either a supplementary budget, or if we were not ready to, if it takes till budget time next year to settle, we did not put the money in, but I would defer to Tammy or someone else. And I know sometimes in the past we have, and I know sometimes we haven't, but it doesn't mean that people who negotiate and agree to a contract are not going to get paid. Of course, our employees are going to get paid. The teachers
Okay.
and everyone else. We're in the last, well, I think we're in the last few months of the teachers' contract. Is that correct, Rick or Tammy?
That's correct. Their contract ends in August. And we are negotiating right now, and I'd rather not speak about the details, but
Right.
it does not mean that the teachers may not get a raise. And I don't think I can say any more. We have, we have rules of engagement, and I don't think I can say any more at this point, but that's about all I can say at this point. But it is true that we did not put anything in the budget for a COLA raise. And that's all I can say. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, there's other issues though too. Watching the budget being done, and I do have some budget experience. I've never seen a contingency line item in the budget. Rather, I see money maybe being put in the budget where it doesn't belong. And that is not a prudent way to budget. So for example, with the solar and the fact that we got the solar, right, so that we could save electricity costs, but then the budget comes this year and we don't reduce our contracted utility expenditures, which just blows everybody's mind because we had such a battle about the solar, and the only saving side of it for some of us is the fact that we were going to reduce our electricity cost. But now the budget comes out and it's flatlined, same as last year. So if there's money in that line that isn't for that line, then it should be being placed in a line for contingency or other, or someplace where it's identified, not so that it gets lost in the budget. Thoughts on that?
That's addressed to the finance committee?
Yes, please.
So in terms of budget items like that, nothing gets lost. If it's not spent, it is returned back to the county as monies that were not spent. They're unused funds. From a municipal perspective, you may be familiar with funds that are returned back to the general fund at the end if they're not spent, and it's a similar situation. So if something is there and it's not spent, and at the end of the year, that money's still there, it goes back to the county. I think, and I defer to the commissioners on this in terms of how they crafted the budget, but I would say that every contingency is in there. In fact, in one of the next advisory board meetings, we're doing what's known as a supplemental budget in order to make sure that agencies within the county are made whole. So it's organic, it's moving all the time because things change all the time. As an example, a contract could come in. Well, how do we fund that contract? Well, that contract could be funded in many different ways through the stabilization fund, which one may call a rainy day fund. We have that opportunity. Last night, I live, as I said, in the town of Milton, and there were requests and there was money attributed to the school department through their rainy day fund, their stabilization fund. So that's there and we address it, but we address it judiciously. And so we start with what the budget looks like, and then we proceed from there. If there are aberrations from the intent of the budget for one reason or another, whether it was a collective bargaining agreement or whether it was snow removal, which is one that comes up a lot, unfortunately. You put money in the budget for snow removal, and then it snows more than ever, like in 2015, or the opposite, it doesn't snow. well, where does that money go? So it goes back and forth. But I think from the advisory board perspective, we look for those pieces and then we want to make sure that we're representing our communities to ensure that the money is spent in the appropriate way.
Okay, I guess, can you see, oh, sorry. Mr. Beckerman, you wanted to say something.
Yes, thank
Sorry,
you.
I'm not the chairman.
My bad.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
I just want to address your question, Ms. Matthew. I think I see exactly where you're going with that, is that if we have a solar field in place, why isn't there savings being shown in the budget itself? The short answer, I would say, is that until the solar field is created and it's running, we wouldn't have any savings. So for right now, we're looking at a budget for this coming year. The savings wouldn't be included. And I'll give you an example. In our community, we're about, we've been talking for the last 4 years about changing over all of our streetlights to LED lighting. Now that's going to save us about $30,000 a year. We've been talking about it for 4 years, but it's finally being done this year. So in our budget that we just passed last night, as a matter of fact, we are actually realizing that $30,000 now. So we will see savings in the long-term electricity costs. It just won't be immediate until that project is actually completed and up and running. Does that make sense?
It does. And so my point is that this savings was supposed to come from the canopy and the roofs, and that is up and it should be running right now. And if it's not running, it's because someone's not dogging Eversource on a daily basis. So it should be reflected in the fiscal year 22 budget, but it's not. So you flatline your utility costs, even though we've been told that that's where the savings is supposed to be seen.
Understood.
And that's what's frustrating. So maybe just inadvertently the wrong line item was chosen to be left flatlined, because had it not been that line item, I wouldn't have known the difference. But because I was looking at that line item, it's the same as last year, and it shouldn't be. So
Okay.
I guess, it's frustrating when we hear that our teachers make small requests for items and there's no money for those to be funded. It's picayune little things too, little parts and pieces that are needed. But one major purchase that really got my attention was the purchase of a brand new $90,000 tractor last spring. And I want to know if the advisory board approved it, because we were actually in a spending freeze when that tractor was purchased. It was never brought before the Board of Trustees for a vote, and it was just purchased. Was it bid? I got the documents, and there was only one response. So it went out, one company. It's a Mac Daddy of a tractor. It's way bigger than we need, especially given that we're going to sacrifice some more fields to solar. And it was purchased in April of last year under a spending freeze. I'm told it was purchased with grant money, but still there are other things that could be purchased with Perkins grant money. So I want to understand why it would seem that someone is making a decision in a bubble to purchase something so large.
Well, I can tell you this, Ms. Matthew, is that nothing is done in a bubble. I will defer to the school on that. My experience tells me that in many situations, those grants can only be used for specific purposes. I want to recognize the wisdom of the commissioners in not only did they do a spending freeze, they did a hiring freeze prior to the spending freeze. So the idea is to be transparent and to be fiscally responsible. So that was their idea. I don't know anything specific about the tractor. I don't know its bearing to the overall piece on this. And I don't know, do you have something, if the tractor piece, is that something that is attributable to the experience of the students, or I don't know.
It was purchased with Perkins grant money, which is for tools for the education.
Okay.
This is the type of item that causes everyone's antenna to go up. And when we talk about being angry and not wanting to hear angry people, I've spent 18 months trying to understand exactly what is going on out here. And if people aren't angry, then they're contributing to the complacency that has gotten us to this point to begin with. Now, I know you don't want me yelling at you. You don't want me chastising you. But the reality of it is this has been going on for 20 years or more. I've spoken with people who worked at the school for 40 years. I've interviewed 20 different people to find out what is going on at this school. And I could tell you stories all night. I'm staying out of the weeds, but it's frustrating. We want honesty, we want accountability, and most importantly, we want checks and balances. And we don't have checks and balances. And I've been saying it from day one. Who is making these decisions? They're not being brought in front of the board. This Norfolk Aggie Foundation that took money out of our school, that is atrocious. It's atrocious because our school needs money so badly, and nothing has come back from that organization. Because if it did, it has to come through the board for a vote. And nothing has come through the board to accept any donations from the Norfolk Aggie Foundation.
I don't know what I'm doing that.
May I interrupt there for 1 second, please?
Yep.
I believe the Norfolk Aggie Foundation is independent. There is no way that funds from the county budget could go to a foundation.
Really? Oh, don't say that. Don't say that on recording, because the Board of Trustees moved almost $200,000 out of the county into the foundation that Rick Fitzpatrick set up.
I don't believe that's true. I'd direct that to Superintendent Quinn.
It's in the meeting minutes.
Excuse
Go
me.
look up the meeting minutes from
Ms.
2014.
Matthews, Could we hear from Dr. Quinn, please?
First of all, I'm tired of hearing Mr. Fitzpatrick's name being bantered around. He did not set up this foundation. And the second thing
Dr.
is,
Quinn, I have to stop you
there isn't-
because it's on the
excuse me,
corporate
there isn't
database.
even
Ms.
$200,000.
Matthew, if you
It's
could.
on the
It's my
corporate
turn to
database.
talk.
Ms. Matthew.
It's my turn to
Ms.
talk.
Matthew, at the beginning of the meeting, I asked for comportment. I respectfully ask that you control your anger and speak directly to Dr. Quinn if that's what you need to do. But I'd ask you to listen right now to what Dr. Quinn has to say. Thank you.
There isn't even 200,000 in the foundation at this point. I'm not sure where she's getting her facts. There, $105,000 was handed to me in a check, and it was asked to be put towards the new livestock barn. The foundation was set up with that $105,000 towards the livestock barn. It came from a Grange in Weymouth Grange. And it specifically earmarked to build or renovate a livestock barn. There has been a check in our account from Friends of Norfolk Aggie that for years we had to go back to Mr. Morse, who was a director 5 directors ago, to find out what that money was. And that was Friends of Norfolk Aggie was a special fund set up. And that's the only thing that the Board of Trustees voted to move into the foundation. The foundation had one event, a golf tournament, and made money on that. That is also in there. We have a teacher at the school who has decided she would like money given to students who need books for college. And she has asked alumni to donate money to the foundation so that she can write checks to students for scholarship, for books and college when they're hurting for money, when they're already in college for agriculture. That's what the foundation is doing. That is all the foundation is doing. That the rest of the money is sitting there waiting to get more money. During COVID, we stopped I will say for the last year and a half, we have done nothing with the foundation except for taking these donations from Aggie alum to give to current students at the Aggie or students who are in college. And that's the truth. And the only other thing I want to say is I hear Miss Matthews' frustration. I talked to her the other night at a volleyball game. I hear her frustration. I'm frustrated because they've had these questions for how long? Instead of asking the people who could give them the answers, they've never come to ask us. We've asked them to meet with us. This group has not asked one, has never come to my office, called me on the phone, or sent me an email. Other than talking to you, Miss Matthew, the other day at a volleyball game, I would love for you people to have come to get the answers to the questions that you have. You're asking teachers who wouldn't know these answers. They're not involved in this. I can certainly answer questions about the tractor, where that came from. I can answer your questions, but I've never been given the opportunity.
Oh, Dr. Quinn, thank you. Thank you so much. I can't believe you just said those things on this recording. That is amazing. So you should check your email again from me, as we discussed the other day, because I offered my help and services for free. I was going to help you with everything.
I don't
and
need
you said,
help. I don't
"Thank
need
you,
help. I wanted
but
you to
no,
ask me
thank
questions.
you." No,
No,
Dr.
no,
Quinn,
she's right.
you were going to
She's
get me
right.
an answer about the $200,800. You never got back to me on that.
The
This is
2000,
truly unbelievable that you would say these things. But regarding the foundation, it's very important that everyone go to the corporate database to search the Norfolk Aggie Foundation, because then you will see Rick Fitzpatrick's name as the person who set up the foundation in 2016. And in March and April of 2017, this is in the meeting minutes that are online, Norfolk Aggie. If you need a copy, I have them all downloaded, as do many of my fellow parents. You will see they moved $105,000. It was a check from the Weymouth Grange written to the school, but it was mistakenly written to the school. It was supposed to have been written to the Norfolk Aggie Foundation, and another $43,000 that was transferred out of a restricted fund at the county treasurer's office into the Norfolk Aggie Foundation. That is not earmarked for anything. That could be used for anything. But here we are in desperate need of things, and $43,000 is sitting somewhere, hopefully, and should be coming back to our school.
so where is the over 200,000 in the foundation? I'm missing that.
I'm sorry, I was adding the golf tournament, and I guess it's under 200,000. So
Oh.
let's call it, what do you want to call it? You want to call it 160?
Ms. Matthew, I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't, Ms. Matthew, I'd appreciate if you wouldn't be as confrontational and just ask direct questions, because that type of interrogatory is not appropriate. And the finance committee can't understand where you're coming from if your anger is superseding the facts. So please just give us the facts, because we can't understand where you're coming from when you're saying things like that. And it's just, we need the facts.
Okay, so there's the facts. $160,000 that belongs to the school. Where is it?
Well, so that still leaves $40,000 from the 200. So where is the $40,000 you speak of?
So I just said I was throwing numbers, 200,000, 160, whatever you want to call it. Let's
Is
call it
that-
150. Call it
We can't-
150.
You have asked us if we read the budget. You have asked us if we are aware of the budget. You've asked if we are salaries, and we are with accuracy. Please don't throw numbers out that aren't accurate, because we can't figure it out. If we go and meet with our advisory board members and we're hearing $200,000 and we're looking for it and it's not there, it's like, well, where did it go? Please be accurate. We're open to everything. We are transparent. Everything's on our website. All the videos are on YouTube. Everything is there. Please, we just need the facts.
I'm sorry, Mr. Reardon, I made a $50,000 error. I wish that was the only error that got made at our school budget.
Well, that's
Mr. Reardon.
inappropriate. That's inappropriate for you to say that. It's just not the kind of information we need. We're a finance committee. We look at the budget. We need information on the budget. Do you have any more specific information on the budget?
Okay, so how about this question? Where is the $43,000 that the Norfolk Aggie Foundation took?
It's in the foundation. I have the books right here in my office for the foundation. The woman keeps them here. They keep them here because in case something happens, at least the school has the books. We do not have access to that money. It is not the school's money. It belongs to the foundation. We can't touch that money.
But it used to belong to the school?
Question, Chairman Reardon.
Ms. Satalski, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to ask Dr. Quinn, then what is the purpose of the foundation? Why is it not possible to access those funds? It seems like some of those funds were definitely intended for helping the school, and there's decidedly a financial need. So I'd like to understand that a little better.
The foundation has its own setup, and they can make decisions. If we've never asked them for money. Their goal was to build a livestock barn. That was really what because that was where the big chunk of the money was going to go, and they kept trying to raise money to get more money. And at one point, we had I don't know what you call architects, seniors in architectural college, work with the farmers to design the building. We got that far, but again, we were trying to raise money, but we couldn't have any fundraisers during COVID. So really, that is their goal at this point. Could they change their minds? Yes, they can change their minds, except that 105,000 can't be touched unless they do a livestock barn.
Okay, I do understand that. I also want to say, however, that perhaps rediscussion of some of those areas might be warranted in this case because of the situations that we're seeing at the school where certain types of expenses are not being met that are pretty necessary. So, I mean, I want to try to also bring this around to potential solutions as well. I know it's hard to be presented with a lot of complaints and then not have proposed solutions and techniques that can be applied. And I do want to state, as somebody who does work in business a lot at this point and deals a lot with this kind of risk assessment and things like that, that I also would like to volunteer to be part of that discussion and help to make proposals for how things could be shifted. I know it's very hard, for example, to take money away from people's salaries, for example. Like that's a tough decision to have to make. Okay. But I also have experienced this past year with numerous of the companies that people I know work for, where due to COVID, in order to keep a company on stable financial ground, they had to ask certain, sets of people within the company to take pay cuts so that they didn't have to lay anyone off and so that they could actually keep the company viable. These are commonly applied techniques, and very often they're considered, much more fair than just laying someone off. That's just a really, really harsh thing to do. So I would like to see a discussion ultimately with the help of the advisory board, perhaps, and with a lot of transparency about what can we do. Because what I worry about is that if the school goes further and further and further in debt, and should there ever be a liability case about anything, then it's in a very dangerous situation. And I don't want to see the school get to the point where it's like taken over by the state, or, there's all kinds of things here, receivership. I don't want to see that happen at all. I mean, it's such a valuable institution and it's so important. So I just want to throw that out there and say, let's also try to look at solutions. And they're not something anyone wants. No one wants to end up in a situation of debt that's increasing.
So I'm curious about the debt, and I'm not sure if I should be asking questions, Mr. Reardon, but I'm just curious, the debt is from the building project that we knew we were going to incur. Is that what you're referring to? I'm not sure what debt you're referring to.
Right, let me talk about that for just a second. So if that was the only debt that was being incurred, then that debt services number should not be increasing significantly every year. My uncle happens to be a former president of the bank. I discussed this with him at length. So you want to see that debt services number going down. So if you're not seeing that debt services number going down, then you're losing ground here. We
realize that
where some of that gets incurred each year in the budget.
Yes, I get that. I understand. But do you realize that we are in another building project now, and that's why the debt increased? We are now in another building project for Kemp Hall with the MSBA for the past 2 years, and that's why the debt increased. But it isn't because we can't pay our bills or keep the school running. And
right, but the danger here is there seem to be some trade-offs being made where, when those trade-offs are things that are not like a building project, for example, if you're not handling some of the things that deal with safety and security, those are serious issues that can bite you really, really hard and really fast, unfortunately. Like those are, you have to protect yourself ahead of time from some of that. So I would like to take a good solid look with a lot of transparency and discussion at like what can be shifted, what can be adjusted in order to get some of those things addressed so that I don't feel like the school's in jeopardy in some way there. I
So
understand
again,
for buildings, I totally
I hear
do.
what you're saying, the security piece. We never said we didn't have money for security. There were grants for security. We could have, the thing with the keypads, I think it was you who mentioned the keypads. We chose not to do the keypads because our students are in and out so much, and it's very difficult to make them bring their IDs with them. We've tried, we can't even get them to scan them for lunches because they never have them with them. So we chose not to do the IDs on the buildings. We did them on the buildings. I mean, it sounds like it's a lot of money, but it really isn't that much for one door. We have one door on every building that could be a key code, and we could lock down. It was a choice made. It had nothing to do with money. I don't know where your facts, so many of these things, I'm not
Well,
sure.
one of the things, Dr. Quinn, is that most of the information that we have accessible to us is the meeting minutes. And there's been also a kind of a little bit of a devolvement over time in the detail of the meeting minutes. So if you look back, 6 years ago, you'll see that there's a lot more detail in there. If you look at more recent decisions, it's really hard to piece together why decisions were made because there's completely not enough detail about the discussion in there. And this is one of our concerns about transparency, is that when we go back to look, we go, gosh, here's a serious area of liability, and all we're seeing really mentioned around some of it is financial stuff. Maybe that wasn't the full discussion, but if it's not, how can we possibly tell? And we look at this and we think, okay, liability issue, there's already a bunch of debt wherever it's been or being incurred from. This is a tricky, worrisome situation. As far as other safety aspects, the paraprofessionals thing, I have heard this mentioned by so many teachers that I've talked to now. They are really actually quite worried. You handle, you have a wide range of children there, and it's wonderful that you take them all, okay? Because it's not always easy. I mean, you have a lot of kids on IEPs and you have a lot of kids with challenges. These kids need a place to go. But at the same time, it's like if you take them on and you can't supply those services, it's a really kind of dicey situation. And it's a really hard balancing act, I know. I really do.
I want you to know that our
I'm
paraprofessionals.
concerned about that because I keep hearing about it from teachers.
The paraprofessionals' schedules aren't even full. We have plenty of paraprofessionals. I wish I understood. And if these questions come up, I wish you would come to me and I'll show you schedules. I'll show you where there's holes, where we could put them. I wish you had come to me to ask me these questions. I would answer them. You wouldn't have to be upset about this stuff. And if you think that it's not real, we could have gotten a group together. I'm frustrated.
Well, I guess I'm frustrated too, Dr. Quinn, because when I see a vote of no confidence that mentions these issues come out from the teachers union, it's like, wait, wow, okay, that is clearly a problem. And I would think that being that you're right there on campus and that the teachers are right there on campus, that this would be something that you guys were addressing together and working on together. And yet that's not what I see reflected in that document that came out from the teachers union. So that is where these concerns get serious legs.
Okay, I hear you.
Okay.
Mr. Reardon, I feel like we're talking about other things than financial, and I
Yes,
don't
we
want
are. So I was hoping to bring it back.
I didn't want to do that, so I'm going to give it back to you. I'll answer any
you,
question
Doctor.
you want me to answer.
No, thank
Mr.
you, Superintendent. So
Mr. Reardon?
I'm sorry, I don't know who that is.
Oh, it's Julie Perillo. May
Ms.
I
Perillo,
speak for
can I
just a
stop you
moment?
May I stop you for one moment, please? I believe, and I can't see because there's so many people on this, it would be so much better in person. I believe Dr. Childs would wish to
I
be
just-
recognized?
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry,
Chairman. I
go
just want to point out there are two people that would like to say something. I thought we ought to give them a chance. Laura Lee Willard, and there was one other person, Elizabeth Antonuccio. Those two people had put something in the chat, and I'm sure you didn't get to see it. So I wanted to
I'm
let you know that
trying.
it was
I see
there.
Laura Lee here, but I don't see an opportunity to ask, but perhaps, so who was first?
Laura Lee Willard asked,
Oh,
and
no, Luzanne.
Elizabeth
Antonuccio
Antonuccio asked to
first.
speak. I think we
So,
ought to just make sure we get to the people who are
absolutely.
here trying to
So,
say something.
thank you. Ms. Perillo, if you could stand by for a moment, please. So Elizabeth Antonuccio, you wish to speak?
Hi, thank you. I actually wrote down what I wanted to say in the chat.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but would you prefer that we respond that way?
No, it's fine. I'll just make it very brief. Just that I support the Aggie allies of Aggie, and the lack of transparency is astonishing and actually unbelievable most of the time. And up until some things have come to light over the past couple of maybe 6 months, I actually thought that Tammy and I had a relationship, and I thought that Tammy and the chair and the board's first and foremost considerations were the students. And I have many non-financial reasons to say that that's not true anymore, but I think that because you want to focus on financial, I'm just going to say that
Not because we want to, it's because that's all we have the
right,
authority.
that's
to
exactly.
entertain.
So the lack of transparency in the budget for items paid, for example, for each meeting, as just a mom, it's very difficult to follow. In our town, we hear that, okay, we are going to vote on paying bill number 12345 related to the paving of the playground parking lot in the Board of Trustees minutes. You can see that there's no mention of it. You have to literally piece together what they're talking about. It's very difficult. So the lack of transparency, as just a mom here, is very concerning. And I really thank you for your time. We love Aggie.
Oh, it's great.
We
Thank you
love
very
Aggie.
much.
We have concerns, but it's an amazing school.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ms. Antonuccio. We 100% agree. I think I speak for every member of the Finance Committee, frankly, every member of the Advisory Board, saying that the Aggie is a tremendous jewel of Norfolk County. So thank you very much. Ms. Willard, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you very much.
Logo. Oh, now you're not. Okay.
Thank you. I did write in the chat what my concerns were. My son is a sophomore. Norfolk Aggie is the best thing that ever happened to our family.
I'm sorry, Ms. Willard, I don't want to interrupt you. Stand by for 1 second. Ms. Antonuccio, what town are you from?
Medway.
Medway, thank you very much. And Ms. Willard, what town are you from?
Braintree.
Braintree.
Yeah.
My wife's from Braintree. It's a good town.
Yep. My biggest concern in regards to the budget cuts is I have seen, he's only a sophomore, and since he started Aggie, he started with an amazing guidance counselor. And we were really disheartened when we learned during the pandemic that she had been let go. And that some of the support staff during a pandemic, to have the school psychologist and other emotional support staff to be let go is really concerning, especially these kids need everything right now, and those are people that they rely on. So I'm just asking the board of directors and the advisory board to please put our kids first and put our teachers first. I know it's easy to look at paper and to look at numbers and make things work, but think about how it affects our children. And that's all I'm asking. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Willard. As I said from the outset, your child is a sophomore, mine is a freshman, albeit not at the Aggie, and I can totally empathize with your situation. We appreciate your words. And please know that although the advisory board looks at numbers, we know that there are faces behind those numbers, and we appreciate that. And that's really important. Frankly, that's what county government is all about, is being able to use a regionalized system to bring people together and to serve their needs. So please know, and I can speak from my colleagues in this, that we know there are faces behind that. So thank you very much. Now, Ms. Perillo.
Thank you. I did just want to say, with the stress, that, you know, frustration that we're seeing and everybody is feeling and getting a vibe off of. And I know this isn't directly related to the finance, but it will give a little bit of insight as to maybe folks who aren't familiar with the Aggie and how things are run. I'm sure it's a little shocking to see folks going back and forth a little bit. To Dr. Quinn's point, efforts have been made to communicate. Students and teachers have spoken at Board of Trustee meetings and have been shut down in several different ways, treated very disrespectfully, told we've heard this all before. If you have anything new to say, you can say it. So I would respectfully disagree with Dr. Quinn. She herself may be receptive to communication, but when she's sitting there with the Board of Trustees, the board as a whole is not receptive. Individual folks sitting there certainly have been in private, but as a whole, they have sent a very clear message to parents and students that your input is not welcomed, not desired. I think that the dawn of Zoom has created a challenge for some members of the board, because I think they're very used to being able to make these decisions without being questioned. And now that these meetings are easily accessible to parents and students, they're finding themselves in a position that most public boards, et cetera, have been in forever. Board of Selectmen, school committee, all of that. I think this is a new experience for the trustees, and the message has been sent to us that this is how we've always done it. We have a right to do things the way we do them, and that's it. And so the frustration and the anger is coming from that place. And I think it's frustrating for individuals who maybe may feel that they aren't sending off that message, but as a whole, that message has been received loudly and clearly by parents, teachers, and students. And I am telling you, as a 23-year educator and as a parent, the damage that you have done because of your disregard and your lack of welcome to parent and student input is deep. The toxic atmosphere has infected the teachers, the parents, the students. And I don't really know how it can be fixed, but the frustration you're seeing tonight is a direct result of the behaviors of, this is how we do it. This is how we've always done it. We will not be questioned, because any question is taken as a personal affront. And that's where this is coming from. For those of you that aren't as intimate with this situation as some of us are, that's why you're seeing this today, is because attempts have been made. Parents are intimidated. It is very scary to speak up to your child's school, because these are the people that you charge to love and care for and educate and protect your child. This is your baby. And so it's terrifying. I shake through every single meeting that I speak, but I speak because what I'm seeing is so inappropriate. But it's frightening and upsetting and painful. And not one of these parents who's either speaking tonight or sitting here listening tonight entered the Aggie school going, I'm going to be the hellraiser. I'm going to be the one that the superintendent hates. Well, I'm going to be the one that the chairman of the trustees hates. Nobody did. We came in with excitement. And this is where we are now because of how we have been treated by the folks in charge.
So,
And I know, Mr. Reardon, this is beyond your scope, but I really felt like I needed to offer that for
No,
some point of reference for
and I-
other folks on the call.
Appreciate that, Ms. Pearl. Please know that the advisory board, like I just said to Ms. Willard, we are aware there are faces behind the numbers. The other piece, though, I just want to clarify, because we are speaking of budgetary matters, and this is important in the sense of how the budget is produced. So are you telling me that your issue is with the Board of Trustees and not with Dr. Quinn and Mr. Fitzpatrick, who have been named otherwise?
No, I would say our issues financially are with decisions that are being made by the Board of Trustees, including Dr. Quinn and Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Well, they aren't members of the Board of Trustees.
No, sorry, the Board of Trustees and because they make decisions as a whole, right? The Board
They
of
actually
Trustees.
don't, no.
Oh.
So the Board of Trustees oversees the county. So they bring information up to the Board of Trustees, and it's up to the Board of Trustees to determine what happens. So the Board of Trustees technically have the fiduciary responsibility, and we oversee that, but they have the fiduciary responsibility. So there is a distinct difference between what Dr. Quinn and Mr. Fitzpatrick do and what the trustees do. And I'm not casting aspersions either way, but I'd encourage you to consider there are differences there. So when you say they didn't allow us to come in to speak, this is always we've done, I'd encourage you to consider the difference between what Dr. Quinn and Mr. Fitzpatrick say, versus what the trustees say. Frankly, I've read the minutes. I wasn't at the meetings, but I've read the minutes, and that's something that I'd encourage you to consider because there is a distinct difference. As an example, our interim Norfolk County Executive Director, the Norfolk County Director, Michelle Labadini, has her job, but she brings it up to the commissioners. So there is that difference, and you're familiar with that as an educator. You can say all you want as a superintendent of schools, but the school committee calls the final shots, right?
Right. So, but it's on my school superintendent and my business manager to bring a balanced budget to the school committee to then vote upon. So I don't feel like I can parse out.
Fair enough.
This
So
is
you're
this is
blaming
above
all.
my pay grade. We'll say
That's
that.
okay. So you're blaming the trustees as well as the superintendent and her team.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
how the decisions are being made.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate
Okay.
it. Does anyone have a question about the Norfolk County Agricultural High School budget?
Mr. Reardon, I just wanted to thank you for allowing us to speak this evening. And I'm terribly sorry that I insulted you.
That's okay. You didn't insult me. Maybe you didn't remember correctly. There's a difference. I don't take it personally. And I thank Dr. Childs, my colleague from Brookline, for calling that out and having my back on that.
Mr. Chairman, I think Natasha has one more brief point to make.
I'm sorry, Natasha, is it related to the budget, I hope?
Yes, it is directly. And that's part of the reason that I wanted to raise it, because it was one of the things that stuck out to me from the beginning, just due to the nature of the types of things I do with numbers all the time.
Ms. Adalski, can I stop you for 1 second?
Yes,
Are you Canadian?
no,
All right, I get the accent. You're not from around here. You don't speak like me.
No, I'm from Alaska originally.
You might as well be from Canada. So, okay, thank you. That's
No,
pretty
no,
far
I
out
grew up in the far north, but I'm actually not Canadian.
there. Okay, I thought I heard a Canadian accent there. I apologize. Give us
No,
the city
I
from
don't
Framingham.
take that as an insult in any.
No, it's not at
way.
all.
I have a lot of friends in Canada.
Absolutely. So do I. I
Yeah.
have a couple of relatives too.
Yeah. So the point I want to make, and this is something that has concerned me since I first saw it, and it's something that I would like to have clarified, and I can phrase this as a question as well, which is, in most budgeting practices, if you're being very, very careful, which everybody usually needs to be, you don't count on income that is not necessarily likely to come in for certain. So you were talking about this, I think, in relation to the solar, for example, like you don't know where that's coming into play.
I wasn't personally. I believe my colleague,
Yes.
Mr. Beckerman was, but I would
Yes.
back him up 100%.
Yeah, and that is completely understandable. So my concern, though, is around the enrollment. I know enrollment is a tricky kind of thing. It's a little bit slippery. It's a little hard to get your hands on ahead of time. But very often there is a gap there that occurs. And it can occur for any number of reasons. It can occur because you don't have enough people applying, or the specific types of people that would be a good fit applying. It can occur because you accept people and then they don't come. Other people make other decisions. I understand this, but standardly each year, looking back at the enrollment numbers, it doesn't seem like the school has hit its full enrollment numbers every time. There's always been kind of a standard shortfall on that. And yet in the budget, it appears, and it's even been mentioned, like that we're budgeting for X amount of enrollment, and yet often enough that enrollment does not get completely fulfilled. So it's one of those budgetary practices where, especially when if you lose a student from out of county, that's a pretty large chunk of change to try to absorb into a budget. And should you lose multiple students from out of county, you can very quickly add up to some fairly significant numbers of thousands of dollars. And so one of the things that concerns me is I worry when I see that year after year, the same budgetary practice is applied, where we, maybe because it's just the desperation to have the funds for things that the school needs, but every year we seem to budget for amount of enrollment that doesn't actually fully play out. And then there's a financial hit that's taken because of that. And my feeling is that shouldn't be unexpected every year. That shouldn't be something like we should be trying to allow for that ahead of time. And then if we should get full enrollment, yay us, then we can feel very happy that, hey, we have extra funds available rather than having a shortfall. So I would love to see that addressed. And I throw it out there as a question because it seems like a pretty logical step to take to try to look back at the historical numbers and say, what should our projection actually be? Let's try to work to that projection and see if we can make that workable. And if we can't mitigate on that basis ahead of time, and then should we be lucky enough to have, like I've heard from Dr. Quinn, which I'm thrilled about, that they've had tons of interest this year, which is completely fabulous. But unexpected things can still happen. I would think that it would be so much healthier to plan based on the historical trend and then get a bonus than to take a hit later in the year and go, oh my gosh, how are we going to absorb this now?
Great. Thank you. We will certainly consider that. Are there any more questions with regard to the agricultural high school budget? Do my colleagues have any questions? Mr. Baldoff?
Negative.
Mr. Beckerman?
No, sir.
Mr. Connors?
No, sir.
Dr. Childs, I did that in reverse. My apologies for my alphabetization being
I
incorrect.
just have a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
The first thing is I want to really, I want to really thank the parents for taking all the time to come talk to us. And I know you thanked us for hearing you, but I also want to thank you for coming. The second thing I just want to say is that I do think that we have the opportunity with the Abrahams Group consultation to get, we need I think as a finance committee member and a member of the advisory board, I need to round out my understanding of all the pieces. And this is one, you're helping us tonight, giving us one piece of information. But clearly, we're going to have information from the Abrahams Group consultation, which is going to be very critical to us. We're going to have budget proposals by the leadership that set programmatic priorities. And I would hope those programmatic priorities would include student and parent input, and then the budget would follow to support those programmatic priorities. So there's obviously steps here that are going to have to happen, but I think it is important to, it's going to take, this is not something our committee, I just want to make sure that people understand we can't decide tonight on different things. We really have to get the input of, we have to hear from everybody and the leadership as the budget is developed. And sometimes the other thing I would say is it's really important to take a long view. One budget does not make the changes often that you really are aiming for. Sometimes it takes 2 to 3 budgets before you really get, you get budgets and programmatic priorities completely aligned. And I just think it's very brave of you to come forward and very positive. And I think, and I just appreciate it. And I have a lot of confidence in my fellow advisory board members and the commissioners, and I know people will take it to heart. And we'll see where we end up after we get through all of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Childs. I will say this to echo Dr. Childs' remarks, that we appreciate all the input that has been provided tonight. I will tell you that on behalf of my colleagues, we do see the faces behind the numbers. And although some of my colleagues may disagree with my view of how government works, mine is a Hubert Horatio Humphrey view, that the moral test of government is how it provides for people in the dawn of life, our children, in the twilight of life, our seniors, in the shadows of life, the poor, the sick, and the disabled. Right there is our children. And please know that that is a concern for us. We want to represent the best interests of our communities and the children in our communities who attend the Aggie, and you as parents. As a 9th grader parent myself, I can tell you, I can empathize, and please feel free to reach out. We will be continuing the budget process over the next few weeks. All of our information is available at norfolkcounty.org. So thank you very much. The second item on the agenda is the response to the questions from an advisory board member. And I had asked that the Finance Committee review these. I think our members have had the opportunity to do so. I just wanted to make sure they didn't have any questions about the responses from Mr. Polito from Dedham. They will be shared at the full advisory board meeting. They have already been sent to Mr. Polito.
Is Mr. Polito on?
Through Mr. Chair, Mr. Polito is in Aruba and sends his best. But I did speak to him yesterday. He's doing well, and he was happy to receive the responses. He did ask that we email them to the full advisory board prior to the meeting of the 19th.
So he does have them.
Yes,
Okay, good.
Thank you.
he was reading them on the beach, I was told.
Okay. Do the members have any other questions with regard to Mr. Polito's? That sounds ridiculous. I'm sorry. Have any other questions with regard to the matters of Mr. Polito's questions? Mr. Baldoff, are you? I see you there.
No questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Beckerman?
The only comment I have, Mr. Chairman, is there were a couple of responses that I think everybody knows. I know I'm the newest member here, and I've had some concerns about capital items being on individual lines. I know there were a couple of responses that seemed to hit on those types of issues as well. So I'd be curious to look into those. Other than that, I have no other questions.
Okay. I'm hopeful, Mr. Beckerman, that we'll be able to address those through kind of the capital planning thing. You've been very strong on that, and I appreciate that. the capital planning process that the Abrahams Group has proposed, and we
Yeah.
can work some of that out moving forward. As far as the historical stuff, I mean, that's kind of what it is, I
Yep,
guess.
understood.
Thank you. Dr. Childs?
I'm okay. No other questions on the Mr. Polito's questions and answers?
Yes, please.
No questions.
Mr. Connors?
I think they were great. I think they were very succinct. I thank all the people in the office for their input, and all the department heads for responding the way they did, because this is a compilation of everybody together answering the questions that were asked by department through each individual budget.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the April 7th meeting of the Norfolk County Advisory Board Finance Committee. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I'm sorry. Hearing none. I will call the roll, as this is a public meeting via Zoom. We can't see everybody, so I will call the roll to ascertain the vote. I will call for Mr. Balda first.
Aye.
Mr. Beckerman,
Aye.
Dr. Childs,
Aye.
and Mr. Connors.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any other matters that may come before this committee that is relative to the budget process, either the 2021 or 2022 Norfolk County budget?
Mr. Buckley.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just if we could clarify the next FinCom meeting and
Yes.
timeframe.
If I could, please. So the original intent of the meeting was to be held next Wednesday at 2:00 in the afternoon or sometime within that frame. I would ask Chair Shea, if he could see if that is possible, or what time the commissioners may be available to be part of this, because it will include the trustees of the Agricultural High School as well as the commissioners. So I don't know, as being both, Chair Shea, I don't know if you have any
Well,
idea.
since we're all here, I see Chairman Little and Michelle Labadini, the acting director, is on. We have a regularly scheduled Wednesday meeting of the commissioners, every Wednesday.
Right.
Two. And we have now, and it's time to change that, that we have a 6 p.m. tentative meeting of the agricultural board. Is that correct, Ed? Chairman Little? Is there any way to combine do you need a standalone meeting, or can you hook on at the end of ours or at 6? I don't think, based on the last, I guess this falls on me because I'm the new chair, we've been going quite a bit beyond 2, and I'd hate to have a separate meeting. I mean, I have to advise you that I don't think we'll be done by 2. And Michelle, you can hook in here if you have another question. What else do we have for Wednesday? That would be 3 meetings. I mean, we can make them, but we've got to talk about the time right now.
I think we have, Joe, we have a regular long, a good length.
A full agenda.
I'm sorry?
A full agenda at 6.
Yes, a full agenda.
I think we could do it at 3. I mean, I got to talk to, I see well, both Peter Collins and Richard Stady here. I mean, I wouldn't say 2. I think 3, we can do it. We'll have 3 meetings.
Okay, all right.
Unless you want to combine with one or the other, but you probably don't, and I don't want to
Okay.
make a suggestion unless.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the initial intent was to have the Finance Committee join with the Board of Trustees and hear the same budget presentations and sort of a week ahead of the advisory board. So I didn't know exactly what time the trustees had scheduled their meeting, but I think it's more of a availability time for your members. It may be wise just to have the members join that portion of the trustees meeting.
So
May I jump in for a moment?
Please.
Okay, thank you, Joe. What we could do is we could have the commissioners meeting till 2. we can suspend the commissioners meeting and have the finance committee meeting and meet with the trustees. When the trustees when the finance committee's done, we go right into the trustees meeting and then finish up the county commissioners meeting. We can do a lot all at once. And we can set it up at certain times. We could always bifurcate our commissioner meeting to add on at the end if we need to.
Bifurcate. You must have gone to BC High.
As yourself.
That would be tremendous. Director Labadini, is that something that would be able to be put together and to share a little on the trustees?
Sure, I just would like to know from trustee Little if that time works for his committee.
Our meeting is posted at 6 o'clock.
Well, the posting, all due respect, Ed, the posting can be changed if it's within the time frame. I believe that's correct, Director?
That is correct.
Good time.
So could it be done earlier, Chair Little?
I believe so. Let me, Dr. Quinn, could you just make a comment? Is there anything pressing that we couldn't do it earlier? That we have to do it later?
I don't think so. I don't see anything there that we couldn't move up. Are you asking us to move the trustees meeting to 3 o'clock? Or are you
2
asking?
o'clock.
2 o'clock?
Well, the trustees meeting with the finance committee at 2 o'clock, and then we'll go into the trustees meeting right after that.
So the public, it should say a 2 o'clock meeting for the trustees. Is that what you're saying? Or does-
Excuse me, Dr. Quinn, if I could, I think if you and Director Labadini work that out with the commissioners in terms of, and the trustees in terms of time, that'd be fine, whether it's 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock.
Okay.
That our members have been, and correct me if I'm wrong to the members who are present, but we have been better able to get to these meetings when they are approximately in the mid-afternoon. Let me just go through, if that works for the members. Is there a member who would have an issue with that of the Finance Committee?
Works for me.
Works for me.
Carl?
I will not be in attendance in that meeting, Mr. Chairman. I'll be away.
Okay. And that would be Dr. Childs. Are you able?
So we'd start at 2, Joe?
Yeah, well, it may be 2 or 3.
Okay, I can make that work. I can make that
Okay,
work.
perfect. So if we could do that.
That's fine with me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chair. Awesome. All right. Is there any other business to come before the Finance Committee?
Motion to adjourn.
Yep, motion to adjourn. Mr. Connors, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Beckerman, I'll call the roll. Mr. Baldoff,
Aye.
Mr. Beckerman,
Aye.
Dr. Childs,
Aye.
Mr. Connors.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The meeting of the Norfolk County Advisory Board Finance Committee is adjourned at 8:08 p.m. Thank you to all who participated, particularly the Aggie allies, for your information. Please know that we'll take it to heart and as we review the budget over the next couple of weeks. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.